What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be addressing exactly how you can optimize your marketing to position your business to close more deals, talking about 3 different things when it comes to curating data, finding the best deals with which you can create a menu of options to monetize. And we're here with the VP of Media and Strategic Growth of Launch Control, Michael Bartolome, and we've known each other for a long time. This is definitely a pleasure to have you back on. How do you actually design a list that predictably can get better results so that you can create that menu of options and close more deals?
The question that we get most often coming in is, where can I get good data? Or who has the best data? If you're looking at any set of data that you're pulling, that's coming from public records, it's not that widely varied. Right? You have people that are in like pre-foreclosure liens situation, or whatever term is money worries. You've got out-of-state landlords. You've got free and clear or high equity situations. You've got probate and pre-inheritance lists. It's not like there are 1,000 list types, right? But within each of those list types, in that handful of list types, there is a motivation profile that goes behind it. Right. So if you're pulling a list of people that are in pre-foreclosure or have liens, have money worries, that the emotional or motivation profile behind that really should inform your approach, whether it be in text or via a discovery call. You can, even within those buckets, you can look in and get deeper kind of motivation profiles by doing a few small extra steps in analysis, so that ultimately you know exactly who you're talking to. If you know exactly who you're talking to, you know exactly how to have each of those conversations. Because when you use Launch Control, our goal in Launch Control isn't for you to send out 1 million messages. Our goal is for you to capture every week a handful of discovery calls that then convert into deals.
Michael, you're right. You need to be able to keep from the very onset of getting the data all the way to having that conversation and nurturing those leads, a seamlessness, and you need to remember what that motivation is, because they could be in foreclosure and they could be any type of list that you pulled with ostensibly with motivation. And that's one thing that we talked about, we'll address, and I'll just address that now in terms of how do you pull the lists that are actually winning? Are you pulling foreclosure? Are you pulling tax liens? Are you pulling the 30, 60, 90 NOD and stuff like that? The answer to all that is yes and no, and it depends sometimes. And let me just give you a little bit more context. We first had to start with analyzing a market. And I'm not going to get too deep into analyzing your market, because that's another discussion. But you have to understand the macro and microeconomic indicators in an area to see if that even makes sense. Because if you go to the middle of nowhere in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, for example, and you look at that town and you say, I want to target pre-foreclosures, good luck. Because there's not that many. It's not a sustainable business model. You're not going to be able to continue to target that type of list. So while yes, on one hand, pre-foreclosures are great and they'll work in terms of generating ostensibly motivated sellers, it's not going to work everywhere. So is that market good for something else? Well, sure. We just closed a $36,000 wholesale deal in the middle of nowhere, Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Why am I telling you this? What list was that? I'll get to that. But starting with researching your market and understanding why you're marketing to where you're marketing is key. That's the foundation. That will give you the ability to discern why you're pulling the lists that you're pulling for your marketing, which is the lifeblood of your business. So the first thing that I would tell you that's actionable intelligence is put yourself in the shoes of the person that's looking to sell their property. And how do you do that? Well, it might be hard, but you'll be able to get it.
I think the background to that, which I think is really, really important, is make yourself a subject matter expert and an expert solutions provider. If you've ever gone to a restaurant, Nick, you go to a Thai food restaurant, and they've got pizza and hot dogs on the menu, you're like, I don't trust this. They're doing too much. When you are in an area and you do the market analysis and you determine that pre-foreclosure and liens are going to work well in that market, and then you learn everything that you just discussed, that person is going to get 8 different phone calls from 8 different investors. And 7 of them are going to say, hey, I can get you cash for your house. We can make this work. And one of them, you, is going to have a very in-depth, expert-led conversation that's going to go through their different solution options, and they're going to feel like they're talking to somebody who's talked to this talk, walked to this walk, done this thing before. And that's going to build a ton of trust because you immediately establish yourself as a subject matter expert. But you don't want to become a subject matter expert by accident. You want to front load that. You front load that, you're going to get a lot more deals right from the beginning.
You have to be intentional about this stuff.
You know, in marketing, there's what's termed as an emotional appeal and a factual appeal. Right? And so being a subject matter expert, knowing all of that detailed information that you just went over is factual, right? It sets up expertise through facts. Stories set up expertise through emotional context. If you're able to tell that story of someone in the market that you've worked with and how you actually helped bail them out of a less than favorable situation, it adds emotional context, and that can be a powerful way to help convert those conversations.
Yeah, totally. You need to be the subject matter expert. And if you're not, where can you go? It doesn't just have to be real estate investing made easy. There are a lot of really great resources online, like Bigger Pockets and the Deal Machine podcast, which I've actually turned up and it's really awesome. And then, of course, the Deal Nation podcast.
Deal Nation, exactly.
Check into the Deal Nation podcast, a link to which we'll leave below in the description so that you can engage. Obviously, Launch Control, you're going to see Michael hanging out there as well.
With Launch Control, what we want you to be able to do is to be able to consistently engage with your pipeline. All right, so you're sending out the text messages, that's going to equal a certain amount of inbound responses, and a certain amount of those inbound responses are going to be ready for a discovery call. And so we want you to be able to turn back every day and be able to engage in new discovery calls. And it goes into what I was saying about the client journey, right? If you're getting bogged down in transaction coordination, you're getting bogged down trying to find a buyer for a discovery call that you had earlier in the week or a couple of weeks ago, and it's adding a stress profile to your job, then you're not going to be engaging with your pipeline as consistently as you would otherwise. So if you use the same tool, use Launch Control to send text messages out to the buyers to find out what they're buying, what you're doing is not just blasting out messages to 200 buyers in your market. You're sending out, let's say, a batch of 50, the smallest that we have, and asking people if they, you tell people something along the lines of, I usually have 2 or 3 distressed properties available every month. I do full vetting. I talk to the homeowners. I get, a full motivation profile. I can kind of create a feeder system for you. Just let me know, right? And you're getting them to join a text thread, basically. And then anytime that you have an available property that's matching their buy box, they're expecting to get a text from you. Right? Now that text is pinned to a single number. They now have that saved as your number that you've reached out to them with as Launch Control. But you might have, 5 buyers that fit the same buy box, right? Like they're all looking for a 2-bedroom, 3-bath in a specific neighborhood, fits exactly what they're looking for. Use the drip automation to send all 5 of them a message addressed to them individually saying, hey, hey, Christian, I've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Oak Ridge Estates. Here's the profile. You're interested in taking a look or chatting about it, right? All 5 of them got that. So now you might get 3 out of the 5 interested in a single property, and your ability to then not only maximize profit, but to turn that around quickly is really high, right? And you're using the system because you know exactly what they're buying. You know that property matches their buy box, and all you're doing is connecting the dots. But you preceded that by creating that text thread relationship with them, where they're expecting you to feed them properties, they're expecting text to be the medium that you deliver, at least the initial, hey, do you want to take a look messaging. And so it connects the client journey, right? It's instead of separate conversations, it connects it all.
Yeah, and that's the same thing that you can do, especially when it comes to full novations with realtors.
Christian, you want to give some details on exactly what we're going to be covering in that webinar?
So we're basically going to go over why is a novation so powerful, because you've probably heard that as a buzzword at this point, but it's more than just a buzzword, because we'll explain what a novation agreement is and how you can make a lot more money in real estate utilizing the novation. And you're going to walk away from that understanding the do's and don'ts of novations from our perspective. There's a lot of ways you can perform a novation contract, there's a lot of ways to do it right, and in our opinion, there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. So we want to both protect yourself legally, but also financially. So you may have heard of different strategies. We're going to break it down and show you what's actually working and what has worked. The marketing that we use is a lot of it is launch control. So that's why, we love having chats like this with Michael. But we're going to end it by talking about how to integrate Novations with your analysis. And in addition to that, then kind of just tell you the next steps for how you can scale with Novation. So we're super excited about that. But before the Novation conversation happens, you got to be in tune with what we're talking about here. And that's marketing. And while yes, launch control is all about text message marketing, there's a lot of other types of marketing out there. But even more than that, there's more to consider no matter what type of marketing that you're doing. And that's why we're having this conversation right now for you as the viewer to gain more insight on how you can get the most out of any platform or any marketing method that you're choosing to use in your business, depending on your budget. And it makes sense. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk about that though, obviously, on the 24th of October. You can find the link to that in the description below to learn more about that. I'm just curious, in terms of people who are using launch control at a high level, what other forms of marketing do you see those investors also implementing to a certain level of success?
And there's basically 3 stages that people go through. And the first stage, and they're likely to be on our light subscription package, right? They're just getting started in their real estate journey. They're looking to build up consistency. You need proof of concept, right? So marketing is just a necessity in real estate investment, unless you're lifestyle investing and you want to close maybe say 2 to 3 deals throughout the course of the year. You're looking to get an extra 40, 50K in revenue. You can probably just do local driving for dollars and end up scraping that together, right? But if you're actually looking to build a business and potentially a scalable business, marketing is a must-have. It's a necessity, right? So you want to do it within cost profile that makes sense for you at the beginning stage of your journey, because you don't have a system of consistent cash flow and consistent deals coming in. You're building up towards that, right? So you're going to use launch control, which has the lowest cost profile for marketing in the industry, as a way to just start the conversations and fill up your initial pipeline. The beauty of launch control is that it's active, right? If you look at something like, if you were to start with direct mail, the price profile is exponentially higher. It's very expensive to run a direct mail program. And you have to wait, it's passive. You have to wait for those conversations to come to you. They're great leads, they're motivated, but you have to wait for them to come to you. And if you haven't had enough at-bats and you aren't really honed in your seller conversation, you could be dropping a golden opportunity because you're just not ready for that, right? So what launch control, because it's active, it gives you the ability to, on a Monday, to send out a couple of batches and to generate seller conversations. Maybe you didn't do well that Monday. Maybe it was not your Monday. Tuesday morning, you can go in, send out a couple more batches, tee up some more seller conversations. So you're getting your at-bats, you're getting your practice in. And what that allows you to do is kind of hone your process with sellers, or hone those conversations with sellers with a manageable marketing budget. And then as the second phase is, as people start to get more consistency with their deal flow, right? They're starting to get more money coming in, and they want to allocate a portion of that to marketing, right? They want to put, let's say they have a bucket of it's going to go towards, future investment in an equity-based property, or adding doors to their portfolio. Some of it's going to go into the wholesaling side of their business. And from that part that's going into the wholesaling side of their business, a certain percentage is going to go to marketing, right? So as they grow, what often happens is the next phase is they add different marketing channels, but they don't have synchronization between those marketing channels. So there's waste, right? Or you've got money being spent on text, money being spent on direct mail, money being spent on PPC, but you're not coordinating those efforts together in order to, as you said, take that very, very, very valuable data and customer profiles that come from that data and extracting the most possible deals out of it. And so the third phase then becomes, is optimization. How do you then take all of these marketing channels that you have and make them work in conjunction with one another, so that you're optimizing the number of deals that you get out of any data set that you put in,
So other ways driving for dollars might be a start for somebody who's looking to do this on a part-time basis. And then you mentioned PPC. A lot of investors are doing that. We're doing PPC in addition. We're also doing cold calling. Cold calling is tried and true. Text messaging is so powerful because 98% of text messages are seen within the first 2 seconds. So whether they choose to ignore it or whether they choose to respond, they saw it. So your marketing message isn't falling on deaf ears, provided you get the right list types.
Obviously, there's some stuff on social media that people are able to find, but those are the core elements to it. The other side of it is not necessarily marketing, but networking, right? Because I think you and I have talked about like the power of a JV deal, for instance, and the willingness of the REI industry to be supportive and to help bring people along.
But I'll tell you, that's part of making sure that you're in the right market, because there has to be a buyer, especially if you're wholesaling, but any buyer, retail buyer or otherwise, you're going to want to use, and this is what we do text message all of our buyers on our lists based off the zip codes. Just makes it easier because we're all over the country. But I found one of the secret sauces is actually empty nesters. Now that's been something that I've gone after before with limited success in other markets. And the reason why I had a lack of success with that avatar first is because I didn't understand the market research aspect first. But when we understand the demographics of the area and we target that as such, we can find somebody who is maybe over 60 years old that had kids, that no longer has kids at home, that left, and the property profile was built 40, 30 years ago, and it's a 2-story property with 3,000 plus square feet or even 2,500 square feet. And the 2 stories, maybe even 3 stories, because there's also a basement. And again, that's going to depend on geographically where you are. And that they've owned it for so long, and maybe they have zero debt or a small mortgage on it. And that is just one piece to that empty nester list. And there's more, but if you target like that, then you're going to find somebody who's ideally looking to downsize, especially if they have a decedent. And that's another piece that you can add to that search criteria when you're pulling your data. So you're going to know that person who owns the property had a spouse that is no longer with us, that they used to have kids living at the home, but they don't anymore. Putting yourself in the shoes of that person. I even had a neighbor down the street who was in that exact same situation. In fact, she used to flip houses. She used to invest in real estate with her husband. And her husband since passed. And she has this acre property that is very hard to keep up for herself, and this really big house. Her kids don't live there anymore. And she fit the profile perfectly. My point is, you gotta actually think from the seller's perspective before you pull the list. And then to Michael's point, carry the knowledge that this is the person you're going to be speaking with all the way to that call to create that menu of options based off of the profile of the property and based off of the person's situation. So that's the other list. And you're absolutely right about that marketing for buyers, because the other lie, I think, not that we've listed a whole bunch of lies, but one lie that I have heard over and over again is, if you have a good deal, it'll sell itself. No, it won't. No deal sells itself. You sell the deal. You do. And how do you do that? Michael just showed you exactly how you do that. You can use launch control to market to buyers in a specific area when you have a deal on the dispo side.
Even though you have all these nuggets, all of these things, if you just word vomit that out and you send a text message or you get on a phone call and you go, hey, Betty, so look, you're 65, the kids are gone, the house is huge, the stairs probably suck. Do you want to sell that to me? That's not going to go over well, right? Because, so you really have to be careful about how you kind of let them guide you to that information. You know it, you can guide the conversation, but there's an art and a skill to knowing all of that without disclosing all of that immediately.
You're absolutely right. And I'll put it this way. There are people that disagree, but also agree with what I'm about to say. And I'm curious if you agree or disagree as it pertains to foreclosures. Drop it in the comments and let me know how you would carry this conversation. But I get the question all the time, and that is, hey, when I'm calling a list of foreclosures, cold calling, or if I'm text marketing to pre-foreclosure lists, how do I bring up, and they assume that you should, how do I bring up their foreclosure? And my response to that is always, you don't. You just have the same conversation you would with any other potential seller. And then those details will come to the surface during that conversation. You don't bring up the foreclosure. That's my thought, and I know others have different opinions about that, but it'll come to light, especially because you don't want that person on the other end of the phone or receiving a text, if they're not the right person, to be their wife, and their husband might have been hiding the fact that they're in foreclosure, and you're not getting the deal, notwithstanding the cavalcade of chaos created in their marriage or their partnership or whatever. But that's the way that I approach it and have seen success doing it. Don't bring it up. That shouldn't be part of your pitch.
Yeah, no, I agree completely that you don't want to bring it up. It's the analogy I used to give all the time is, like, if you're walking along the road and you see someone's stuck in a ditch, do you throw them a rope and help them out of the ditch, or you yell down, "Hey, you're in a ditch," right? Like you're not just shouting out the obvious problem, right? That's just going to make them feel terrible. You want to help them out. But as part of that, and I won't give you like a script for this, but I will give you two pieces of advice, which is one, don't apologize, and two, be transparent, right? So if somebody's in that, before you even get into the conversation, if they're being kind of combative, you be transparent. Look, like I invest in properties in the area. I work with a lot of homeowners. Here's what I do. I look on county records. All of this information, all the information about the home is available on county records, including how to get in touch with you. I then look on Google Maps and I search the area and I see if it's an area that I'd be, interested in investing in. That's why we're having this conversation. I did some homework to find out, and I just wanted to see, where you're sitting with the house, what you're looking to do with it, and if nothing, that's fine. But I just want to be able to, start this conversation. And if they go, well, if you can see all that, can you see that it's in pre-foreclosure? Yeah, I can see that. Then you can get into solutions, right? And you can say, because they offered it, right? So then you say, look, do you have any experience with this? Because I've worked with dozens of homeowners. I've helped them exit out of this and find a deal so they didn't have to go through the pre-foreclosure system. Like, where do then you can let them guide. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go through the A to Z of it? Do you want to, and you could let them kind of pick their path, choose their own adventure, so to speak. But you're doing it as a confident subject matter expert, not as somebody that's like, cash, yes or no. Those are your two options. Like you're actually providing a service.
I like that analogy. Hey, you're in a ditch. That's a good way to think about it too. Because if you're approaching that conversation like, hey, you're in pre-foreclosure and we're looking to buy houses in the area. What? Hey, you're in a ditch. I love it. Well, this has been great. Thanks so much for taking the time. I know the info that you share and always share is super valuable, so I'm glad we could get this out to Real Estate Investing Made Easy. And for people who are just like, dude, this Michael guy, I want to be best friends with him, where can they get in touch with you? Where can they see you? Is it on the Deal Nation podcast exclusively?
Yeah, I mean, you can connect with me through the Deal Nation podcast, but honestly, the easiest way, if you're involved with launch, like just reach out. If you're already a Launch Control subscriber, reach out to your CS rep and your customer service rep. You'll have a dedicated rep. And if there's something that you want to loop me in on for strategy, happy to do it. It's part of our team building structure. And then Christian, if it's somebody from your community that wants to connect with me, can go through you and get directly to me that way.
Man, well, we'll leave a link in the description below, you guys. And we'll see you on the next one where we're going to continue to make real estate investing easy.